Welcome to the Ascension Stargate podcast series, where we discuss the aspects of human consciousness, spirituality, metaphysics and philosophy, energy, extraterrestrial life, science, biology, and the alchemy of higher states of beingness, all from a heart-centered perspective. I am your host and guide, Glenn Mate, and let's begin our journey. And welcome to another amazing podcast series here on the Ascension Stargate podcast series. I have a wonderful guest today. This guest is near and dear to my heart. She is such a special individual, such an inspiration, such a wonderful teacher. Dr. Connie Kaplan is the recipient of mystical information, and she tells us the real reason why we are incarnating. Surprisingly, it's not to learn lessons. It's not to grow the soul. It's not to accomplish something that we would normally think of. And it's not to heal anything or to do anything. I can't even speak. I'm so excited. The real reason we're here is just to be, to embody the form of who we really are, and in our most perfect expressions, the gift is you. You are specifically curated, configured of spiritual principles, frequencies that combine a unique expression of human form. Her work helps you identify those frequencies unique to you and eliminate everything that is not you. She offers this information through dreaming work, through spiritual practice, and community support. Her work is international with students from every continent. And the personal attention you get when you work with Dr. Connie Kaplan is invaluable. And I myself I've been a student under Dr. Connie Kaplan for over a year, learning. And we are just wonderful human beings when we realize who we truly are. So, Connie, thank you for all of your amazing work that you've done throughout the years and embodying and growing a community that is just expanding and expanding and expanding with your work. Thank you so much. And I just want to ask if you could tell just a little bit about your story so we know how you came into this work.
Sure, and thank you for that amazing introduction. That was very sweet to hear. So basically what happened with me, I'll just do a quick timeline as if time works on a line. I was working in television production in my early adult years, and one day I got sick. And I thought I had the flu, and they called somebody to fill in for me. And it wasn't the flu. And I started this downward spiral, which was just unbelievable. I started losing the ability to function. Like I couldn't remember things like how to get that phone to stop ringing, or, what you're supposed to do when you hear the doorbell. I just had a serious brain something. And the long and short of it is that illness put me to bed for almost 2 years. I slept 15 to 18 hours a day for the better part of 2 years. And they couldn't diagnose it. It didn't quite fit any. They definitely ran all those tests for like brain tumors and whatever. It was none of that. And it didn't quite fit any of those other things like Epstein-Barr or chronic fatigue or, those things. It didn't quite fit into that model either. And it was about 10 years before I was diagnosed. And it had been a brain virus, a virus that erupted in my brain and interrupted some of those synapses. That's why I had to kind of relearn almost everything that's just foundationally functional. It's not like I forgot who I was or who my children were or anything like that. But anyway, okay. So that ended my career in television production. And at that point, I started, I just hesitate to find the exact words. It was kind of like receiving, but it was also kind of like perceiving information to which I had not had access before. And so I started writing it down, and I started teaching because I had had many, many dreams during those 2 years of sleep that seemed to be teaching dreams. So I started teaching this version of dream understanding that's so totally different from anybody else's dream work that a lot of times when students sign up for my dream work, they're like, whoa, no, that's not, that's not Jungian. Yeah, no, that's not Jungian. So it's just this kind of radical, different way of understanding dreams, why we dream, why we sleep, what the dream field is. So there's that. And then a few years later, I was with my father at his deathbed. He was dying. And I had an experience. Now, the way I've described it in the past is that two angels entered the room and literally blasted me into another dimension, a dimension that was just sound, color, geometric shapes, no words. I play with that story a lot because I don't like the idea of othering the angels.
Right.
I kind of feel like what happens when I have these experiences that information comes through is more like I get out of the way. My own story that I tell myself about myself ceases to rattle around in my head. My internal dialogue stops. And then it's almost like a portal opens into other kinds of information, maybe into the noosphere, into other morphic fields that I haven't ventured into the void, into the dream weave, into the matrix, whatever comfortable word you have. I seem to have developed an ability to do that, but not willfully. It's not like I can sit down and say, okay, now I'm going to channel or something. That's not what I do. But I do occasionally fall out of myself and this information comes in. And so that's the information you were referring to. That in the beginning, the first information that came in was, you humans don't know what an incarnation is. You don't even know why you're incarnated. You think it's to learn lessons, and you call your planet a school, and you think it's to write a book or to produce a movie or to produce a thing, or you think it's because you need to learn lessons that you didn't learn in past lives. And you've got all kinds of stories that you tell yourself about why you're incarnated. But the reason you're actually incarnated is because life force wants to experience itself in a very unique configuration of energy, and that energy is you. And that configuration can be identified. Mm-hmm. And if you know the identification of the spiritual principles that are the configuration of your unique field of energy, then all you have to do is get rid of everything else that's not you, and you're delivering a gift by being the gift from the level of soul into form. So that's about it.
Thank you for sharing that. That gives us a better understanding. You mentioned, all of the things that get in the way, and we create these stories. And we also grab onto information that necessarily isn't really ours or true. And, when we allow these things to dissipate, or we just become into our own beingness, they seem to fade. And we start to see the real beautiful person that exists within that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it also opens the doors to other types of experiences, because we're not in control of everything all the time.
Mhm.
And we as human beings, we have to always have the reins of that control. And that's not necessarily what we really need to do all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And those stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves are, there's a lot of lies in there, just plain old not even truth.
Right.
And it starts pretty early in your life. Like for example, you live in a family dynamic, right? And so let's say you're 18 months old, something like that, and you are ready to crawl down from your mother's arms and crawl around on the floor. You crawl around on the floor, you bump your head on the table. You cry. It hurts. Your mother picks you up, soothes you. You get back down, you crawl around, you bump your head again. Eventually, you're going to go, oh, got it. Receive the memo. The table leg is not going to move just because I'm here. So I'll just, all right. So that's how you start building your reality, and that's how you start building your story that you tell yourself about yourself.
Right.
But it's not just physiological. So let's say you live in a family in which there is emotional abuse or
Mhm.
even physical abuse. But somewhere you know that this is your safety place. And so for the sake of survival, you develop workarounds, and also into your story goes, and love and physical abuse are connected, right? So you will spend your life with that story until you recognize the lie. And then you go outside and you start playing with the nature spirits and the rock people in the backyard, and you come back in because now you have language, and you tell your mother about it, and she says, no, 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 that's not real. That's not real. Don't do that. So you may have been born. I mentioned these spiritual principles that you're potentially born with. Some of those spiritual principles are directly connected to the information of the mineral kingdom, the rock people. And
Right.
some of those spiritual principles are directly connected to the plant people and to the animal people. And so it is actually real that you can possibly see nature spirits and hear information from animals. And that is real, but you're told that it's not real. So there you have another lie woven in. And then you get to school, and oh my God, within the first 6 months of first grade, you're labeled. You're either one of the smart kids in the fast reading class or you're not, and you're labeled, and you somehow you buy that label and you wear it for
Hmm.
the rest of your life. You will either consider yourself to be one of the smartest kids in the room or not, because because of a lie that was embedded early on. So yes, those are the kinds of things that we address in this work. It's like, it's not a psychological kind of thing. It's a, what do you tell yourself about yourself that blocks the spiritual principles that want to express themselves through you? Because that's what free will is. We have the ability to willfully block ourselves from being ourselves, right?
We
So a
do.
lot of times people come to me and I say, "Oh, look, you have all of these principles in your garment that you're kind of almost not human, are you? You're more like a nature spirit." And then they'll start crying. Yes, I've always been told that that's crazy, So
Mhm.
anyway, were you about to say something? I just kept
Yeah,
blabbering.
and no, we go back to our childhood memories, and so many of us had these imaginary friends, or we spoke to the trees, or we spoke to the birds, or the smaller animals that were around our homes, and we're we're taught like that's no, that's not, that doesn't exist. So just get that out of your head, or there's something underneath my bed. Right? There's something underneath my bed, and I need the comfort. So, now we've introduced a fear into that.
Mhm,
And then we
mhm.
become afraid of that, or we were told that that isn't good, we shouldn't be doing that. And then now we have another fear introduced, and that creates just another stepping stone as we continue on in our adulthood to address and to better understand that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the thing under the bed. That's another thing that we talk about a lot, and more in the dreaming classes than in the invisible garment classes. By the way, these spiritual principles that are dominant in your system, we call it the invisible garment. They wrap themselves around you like a swaddling cloth, and they're with you, forever. So I'll be referring to the invisible garment. But what we've found is that when that scary thing under the bed or in the dream, that scary thing that's chasing you, and so you can't really run, and that thing, those kinds of dreams. We found that more often than not, those scary things are actually our own principles trying to wake us up or trying to get to us, trying to own us again. And a lot of people, a lot of spiritual teachers will tell you that the biggest fear that you have is death, the fear of death.
Mm.
But actually, this information that has come through me says the biggest fear that you have is the fear of self-actualization. It's very scary to think about how amazing you actually are. So,
And that is so true because through our lifetime, we wear so many masks. We wear the mask of I am this particular person. And when I go home, then I'm the husband or wife. And then when I bring my children to school and I'm in that environment, I'm now the caretaker. And when my family comes back, I'm now the homemaker. And then when I go back out, I put on my business persona and I'm now this, astute person when I put on my clothing, so to speak. It creates that mask. And we wear, if I recall correctly, between 30 and 40 different personalities that we embody instead of being the truthful and authentic person that we really are in all respects.
yeah, not only do we wear them, but we believe them.
Yes.
We actually believe our own false masks. That's
And we're
phenomenal.
willing to die for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We're willing to die for that. We
Yeah.
are willing to live and die on our paradigms, our beliefs, these systems that hold us and bind us. And when we start to break them apart, we're like, God, what was I thinking? What was I feeling? And you bring in that self-compassion and say, "No, I can live from this space of who I really am. And I can just be that loving person or whatever that you choose that you need to embody."
Yeah. Have you noticed, Clem, that people, even though we have spent the last, I don't know, 5,000 years or so, 2,000 definitely, in a kind of mental, rational,
Mm.
developmental phase as a species. And even though we have learned that we're supposed to worship science and the doctor and medicine and whatever, there's still belief still seems to take, pardon the expressions, belief still seems to trump anything that is proven by science, right? So, or by, so if I believe something and you give me actual empirical evidence that that is not true, most people are going to go with their beliefs anyway.
Mhm. Right? They become
That's
dismissive.
really a fascinating. Uh-huh. They have to diminish the evidence. They have to cancel you because you brought the evidence. They have to, because their beliefs are so precious and so special to them so that's what you said earlier, that one of the things that I teach is you find out what your principles are, and then you eliminate everything that is not that. That's hard for some people to eliminate the not, like even if you believe, let's say, that you are always a victim because when you were young, your daddy was never around, or your mother died when she was young, or something, or when you were young, or something happened that made you feel scared and alone and victimized.
Right.
And then that victim personality became so precious to you. You identified with it so totally that you will continue to create stories in which you are a victim,
Right.
even if it's not even like
That
possibly true.
treadmill of reality of thought that keeps creating your own reality, that
Exactly,
life
exactly.
keeps
If you stay
picturing
on
the
that
film
gerbil
of
wheel,
victimhood.
right? If you stay on that gerbil wheel that you created about who you are, you're never gonna. I mean, that's okay. It's not like, oh, this is the other thing about life force wanting to live itself through you. Life force doesn't care. If you want to stay on that gerbil wheel, life's like, oh, all right, this is what it's like on the gerbil wheel, right? So it's like totally up to you whether you want to stay there or not. But it's more fun if you don't.
Right. When we step aside of that journal wheel, even if it's for a short period of time, we start to get to have different experiences in our reality. Right. And when we have that awareness, it allows us to say, oh, I'm stepping foot into the pool of victimhood right now. And it's a choice, right? I can pull myself out and experience something different, something new, or I can go back to like, oh, that's the comfort of victimhood. This is what I
Mhm.
know. This is what feels like it's providing something to me that I'm stuck in. And we know neurologically that, when we start to repeat these patterns, they take a little bit more than just a single thought or a single occurrence to get out of. It takes
Mhm.
some practice and work. And that's
Mhm.
something that we're not necessarily used to in this world because we want instant gratification. Oh,
Mhm.
I just did a meditation and all of a sudden life is good, life is cheery. And then 3 days later, we're back in the same situation again.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I teach is it's like a spiritual technology or an energetic technology to get you off that gerbil wheel. And it's so simple, and it takes like 15 minutes a day to pull your energy back that you've left, just like you've left your energy in those, oh, I'm gonna pull some of my energy and I'm gonna put it in a belief that tables are solid. And now I'm going to pull some of my energy and put it in a belief that love and emotional abuse are the same thing. And we've left our energy out all over everywhere over the past. And well, that's another thing. According to this body of work, by the time we're about 21 or 22, we've donated all of our energy to
Mm-hmm.
our story. And after that, unless we pull our energy back very specifically, we have to run everything down the same line. So that's why it's so easy to be a victim, be a victim, be a victim, because we haven't pulled our energy back from every one of those little moments when we felt victimized. So anyway, I teach this little technology, and it's very simple, and it takes about 15 minutes a day. And then people will say, well, how long do I have to do it? And I said, well, forever. What? No, you have to do it every day. This is not like a cafeteria shopping. This is like every day you pull your energy back. Well, for the rest of my life? That's right. Well, when will I start seeing results? I don't know.
When you get good
Right?
at
So it's like that.
it.
Well, then why
When
do
you
it? Why
become
do it?
consistent, right? And it's just like, the things that we don't necessarily put emphasis on is, our nutrition, right?
Yes.
Which gives us energy. But we don't put emphasis on our emotional energy and all of the other energies that come into us and that make us who we are. you know, yes, we do take a little bit of, the carrots that we had and this, particular food and the energy of that. but we also are always giving energy away too.
Mhm.
So, it makes perfect logical sense to create a self practice. And, I think our indigenous cultures were very, very good at this. They knew when they were giving energy and how to manage their own energetic presence, their own energetic self. And modern man today is like, that's poo poo. If I can't do it in 5 minutes, if I can't get the hack, if I can't get this, if I don't have an app for it, that's too much for me.
Right. Right.
But
So it really does just boil down to, and this is what I ask, every student who tries to sign up for one of my classes, the first thing I ask them is, are you actually interested in authenticity? Are you actually interested in becoming so clean that you're diaphanous? That we can see all the way through to the core of who you are. Are you actually interested in that? Or are you just signing up to take another class? Because there are plenty of people out there. There are plenty of faux spiritual teachers and whatever out there who are happy to take your money and tell you stuff. But I'm only interested in transformation. So what is it?
right.
So, yeah.
There's a huge benefit when you start to say, I want to become the best version of myself and truly mean that. And then take the effort to say, these are now life practices. And it's about celebrating who you are every day and being appreciative of who you are. And as you start to alleviate all of these paradigms and things that are attached to you and the belief systems that you're attached to, life gets interesting and it gets better. It gets exciting. And you wake up wondering, God, what's today going to bring? You know, and all of the chaos of the world exists, but there almost is like this invisible shield where you can be aware of it, but you don't have to be integrated with it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we can make it a little bit more concrete too, because, when you just kind of say life gets better, or life gets more interesting, or, whatever, I don't really, who knows what that means, but life becomes, you start as ising life. You start letting life be exactly what is rather than what you um, interpreted it to be, rather than how you let something that happened fit into your story. So, for example, when you start doing this practice that I teach, you start pulling back. Not it's a little bit hard to describe, but it's not like you're pulling back memory. You're not unremembering things that happened. You're pulling back your interpretation of what happened and your emotional investment in what happened. And so now, when your emotional investment is no longer there, the relationship, let's say, that you have been pulling back energy from becomes an isness rather than a set of interpreted memories, right? So, what I found when I first started doing this practice, which was almost 35 years ago, I think, um, as I was pulling back information, and you pull back good information as well as bad, good investment as well as bad as well as neutral. Just anything that you remember, you've left some of yourself there. And so when you pull it back, it becomes not a here or there, it becomes an isness. And so as I started doing that, I started hearing from, for example, from old boyfriends, somebody I hadn't talked to in,
Hmm.
30 years. So, I was just thinking about you, and I just want to call you and touch base, because there's no longer any kind of, well, one of the analogies that I use is, you can't play tug of war if one person puts down their end of the rope.
Mhm.
So when I put down my end of the rope in those relationships, the relationships are no longer a stressful dynamic. And so then they become something that you can enjoy. And that's how you kind of rewrite history authentically. Some people rewrite history by just making it up a different story.
Mhm.
But when you just remove your emotional attachment to your story just becomes what is. Does that make any sense at all?
It does. It's like taking the dramatic music out of the movie, right? The dramatic music that makes you tense or it makes you relaxed. It just becomes a movie,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And the the benefit of that is it widens the perspective of how you see something and
Mhm.
allows something new to come in because you're now not pulling on that emotional string of tension or of investment, even though something may have happened 15, 20 years ago.
Right. Right.
And the daily process of doing this, of releasing all of those beliefs around that, creates an openness, right? It creates the ability to look at something in a new lens of perspective. And a new lens is a new idea.
It's funny that you brought up the movie sound, the music in the movie, because my husband and I kind of play that game because we're both in the entertainment industry. And so we say, wouldn't it be easier if our lives had a soundtrack so that just before the car wreck, the music goes, right? And so we kind of do that with each other every once in a while. It's like, I'm walking into a room and I'm about to scold him because he didn't load the dishwasher correctly or something. I'll walk into the room like this, dun, 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 just so he'll know
Right.
it's about to happen. Get tense. And so we're able to laugh most of our story away before we get emotionally attached to it.
That's great. I love that. Um, Thank you for sharing that personal anecdote because uh, we can all resonate with that for sure.
We can all create our own soundtracks, right?
Right. And some will be the theme song of Jaws, and some will be,
On
the
a enchanted evening.
the ballad of, of
Yeah.
of something. So that's great. Um, Connie, I kind of want to get into some of the new work that you're working on. You know, the intro to this is like life right now is pretty chaotic for most people, I would say. There's lots of ups and downs. We've got changes in government here in the United States and also throughout the planet. And it's driving people to be on the brink of insanity, so to speak. So, would you want to talk a little bit about some of the new work or the work that you're bringing back in up in front and center that relates to that?
Sure. Because insanity, of course, is the title of the class that I'm about to start teaching, except two words, insanity, so that we can create a community of people who hold each other insanity, hold each other in being sane during this whirlwind, hurricane, tornado, whatever, earthquake, whatever it is
All of
that
the above.
that's
Check.
coming our way, right? But basically, the work that has been emerging through my experiences lately is that these spiritual principles, there are 30 spiritual principles that interface and interweave to create human form. And in your unique configuration, maybe up to 10 or 12 of them are dominant in your particular set of energies. And each of those principles, I've been teaching them for the last 30 years, by defining them. This means this, this means this, this means this. Each of them is actually a frequency. And so now we're starting to move into understanding these principles as vibrational frequencies that all erupted simultaneously as latency at the beginning, in origin, at the Big Bang. So what we're looking at is the vibration of origin. We're taking ourselves back to the ability to follow our own vibrations back through, the cells that we got from our mother, and the cells that she got from her eating whatever she ate, and the cells that she got from her ancestral lineage, and then the cells that were stardust before that. We can track ourselves all the way back to origin. And it kind of changes the language of in the beginning was the word to in the beginning was original vibration. And that vibration through the agency of fractals or something, has created multiple versions of itself and multiple nuances of itself. So what we're studying now is how each of these 30 spiritual principles that are unique to humanity function as vibration. So, for example, when it'd be best to be in your presence, but even through Zoom, because we've only known each other through Zoom, your frequencies, your vibrational frequencies and my vibrational frequencies find ways to intertwine with each other. And those frequencies exist in the torus field around us. They don't originate in the body. The torus field are the frequencies that then concretize and create the physicality. So these torus field frequencies sort of intertwine with each other, and that is what creates the relationship that you and I have. If there is conflict in that relationship, it's because of the lies that we still carry in our stories about ourselves. And so I carry a lie that says, he's a white guy, can't trust him, that creates a conflict between you and me. And you might carry the same, she's an old woman, gotta watch them, right? So if there's conflict, it's because of the lies in the system. But if there's not conflict, each relationship that you have with every person is also as unique as you are. And you can understand those relationships better through learning how to experience the frequency more than judging each other by how we look, how we behave, what we believe, what political party we belong to, what religion we belong to, what are our lies, right? And so a lot of people create relationships through common lies, right?
We call that trauma bonding, right?
Yes. Or just like joining the same club, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be in the same frequency with each other. So that's what I'm teaching now is how to recognize, first of all, how to identify the frequencies that are you, and then how or that belong to myself, and then the frequencies that belong to you and how they sing with each other. Each of the frequencies also is correspondent to a musical note. And so how those musical notes create a song or a dance with each other. So what we're doing in the sanity class this year is we're only meeting once a month, and we have a sanity checklist. It's like, how am I reacting or am I responding? Emotional health. How is my emotional health? Am I actually hearing what is being said, or am I hearing it through a mental box that I have already created about what's true and what's not true? And as you pointed out, how's my physical health? In this moment, as I'm in a communication with you, have I rested well? Have I eaten well? How much stress is my body having to process? that needs to be factored in with every encounter that I have with every human being. Because when my body's off, I'm gonna, I'm gonna not be present cleanly to the situation. And then the fourth one, which is a little bit harder for a lot of people to understand, is that each of us has an ethical frequency. We have a sense of what our plumb line is ethically. So the question is, am I in plumb? Am I being faithful to the spiritual energetic frequency that is my ethical body? So we have this sanity checklist that we use. And so when we meet, often what we'll do is just pull up an instant, a circumstance. Just tell me something that happened to you this week, and let's run the sanity checklist against it and see how you did, and we just are supporting each other in remaining sane. And it's very hard, for example, to not emotionally react or to not mentally reject when somebody is saying something to us that is outrageous,
Right.
right? And so what we tend to do, I think you mentioned this earlier in the hour, what we tend to do is we say, they're making me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's your fault that I'm crazy because, if it weren't for you, I would be fine. Or if you agreed with everything I believe, I wouldn't have to self-examine at all. So that'd be good. So it's your fault that I'm crazy.
Right.
That's sanity.
You're just driving me nuts.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Dun, 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 dun. Exactly.
And what a valuable tool. To implement that into your daily regimen, and that's awareness with also being accountable for yourself, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And as a society, we need to become a little bit better at that, and I'm kind of dancing around that one. Because, we need to take responsibility for what we say, how we act, and the energy that we put out into the world. And
And take
we also have to be
responsibility.
responsible for how we react to it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Look for response rather than reaction in myself, right? When I see reaction, then exactly what am I doing and why? I'm doing I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing on the internal uh planes, because I want to be right, or I want to be acknowledged, or I want to be, better than or something. And that's another big aspect of the sanity work is learning to pay attention to the words that you use in your inner dialogue. Because the words that we use internally are going to outpicture themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anytime I catch myself using violent language, and I'm not talking about, you know, I hate that person or I'm going to kill that person or anything like that. Anytime I'm using violent language internally. And for example, one of the favorite words du jour is trigger. That really triggered me. That's a violent word. That's a violent word. Or what strikes me. That's a violent word. Or even, as you pointed out earlier, what I'm afraid of. We hear that a lot. What scares me the most is it's always them. It's always something they're going to do. So it's like fear projected, fear projected. That kind of internal dialogue eliminates the possibility of self-actualization. Period. Drop mic.
Right. Absolutely. Because we're taking the thought empowered by an emotional aspect and throwing it out to the world.
Mhm, mhm.
And even if we don't verbalize it,
Right.
right? That's just the internal monologue that's running. We could be listening to something information coming in, and then all of a sudden those words come through,
Mhm.
which is the same thing as just verbalizing. And because thoughts are things, they are a vibration. And just as you were saying vibration before, you know, we could be in vibration of things that are beneficial, and we can also be in vibration of things that are not so good for us. They can become harmful.
Yeah.
So that becomes very important to address that internal dialogue. And when we address the internal, dialogue and monologue that we run, then we can start to see the changes that will come through. Just with that awareness piece, right? That checklist of how sane am I right now? Where am
Yes.
I? Right? That temperature check, that pause is so beneficial because that gives you a choice point to choose differently, right?
And that just helps you recognize how powerful you are.
Mm.
Because if I'm joining in the fear bandwagon or the violence bandwagon, even with my thoughts, I'm supporting that. I'm pushing it. I'm reinforcing fear or fight. Here was one of the things that annoys me about politicians. They're always saying, I'm going to fight for this,
Mm.
and I'm going to fight for that, and I'm going to fight against this, and I'm going to fight, fight, fight. And what they don't realize is that to fight for something is no different than to fight against it,
Right,
just reinforcing violence
right.
through language and through those thoughts. Uh, I'm going to
Great
advocate
if
for
we
this.
just turn that word around and put inspire.
Yes.
I'm going to inspire
Yeah.
you this. I'm going to inspire.
Or I'm going to just advocate for it.
Right.
No, I'm going. This is what I would like to stand up and say. Um, I don't know if our politics will ever get there, at least not in the near future. But the point is that that's one of the things that keeps us crazy. That we keep being having fidelity to war language, war thinking. Immediately when we hear about the um, what's the word I'm looking for? The things that are flying over New Jersey,
The drones.
the drones. Immediately when we think of the drones, we're like, oh, it's got to be aliens and they're spying on us and they're trying to, or oh, maybe it's the government, maybe it's Big Brother, or it's got to be some kind of war thing. It's got to be bad because that's what my internal dialogue goes to. And because that's what I'm trained to do, because
Right.
I watch TV and TV tells me that that's what I should do, right? So, like any number of pundits are happy to come on TV and tell you what you should think about darn near everything. And so that's easier than thinking, just doing what
Right.
they
The
tell me to do.
information's available. Here I
Yeah.
am. Take me, please. And then we have social media, which has these
Oh,
algorithms. So if you happen to spend a second and a half on something, it notices that, and then we'll keep presenting similar aspects of that information
and
over and
listen, I
over.
swear, sometimes I don't pull anything up. I don't click on anything. I don't even say it out loud. I think something and an ad for it shows up on my next, trip to Facebook. It's like, I don't know what's going on here, but everything that I think is available to everybody. That's another thing about the sanity class that we all kind of have to like, okay, fine. My thoughts are not private. They're
Right.
they didn't originate in my head. They originated elsewhere, and everybody else has access to the same thoughts. So get over myself.
Right. And we spoke about this earlier about just because you have an idea, you may not be the very first person who created the collective of that particular ideology. You're tapping into that energy of that idea, and there are 8 billion people tied to this energy, and we're all, pulling off of this.
Right. You got the patent, but right. And
Right.
like one of my favorite lies. This is one of my favorite lies that we get taught the minute we go to school. Christopher Columbus discovered America. Tell that to any indigenous person.
Right. They're like,
Yeah, no.
no, no.
Yeah,
And they
no.
may even say, when Christopher Columbus and his 3 ships did come over, they did not present themselves of who they actually were and what their intentions were.
Right.
And yet, when the indigenous people speak, they say, we welcome them. We knew you were coming. You were our guest, and we came with open arms.
Mm-hmm.
We accepted you.
So here, have some smallpox.
Yeah.
And that's another lie that's one of my favorites is we live in a democracy. No, we don't. Mm-mm. No, we don't. So it's like what happens when we start recognizing the lies that we bounce around in our heads, even that little lie, democracy
Oh,
lies.
that brings
When
up a great point, Connie. We spoke about this before, and this is paramount to the work that you do, is to start to embody and learn the true meaning of words, and not how we rebrand them, such as the word, we'll just use democracy because we've used that United States is a democracy. We live in a democracy. Oh, no, we don't, if you understand the true meaning of the word. That is
yeah,
not what a democracy is. We can hopefully aspire to be in a democratic society one day, but is very far from the truth. And yet we speak with it that, I'm an American, I live in this democracy. I'm very proud of this. I'm proud of this, who we are. And that's a lie.
mhm,
We don't.
mhm.
So
And
it's
that's
so important to go back to the true meanings of these words, to understand the root of that.
right. I spend much more time in the etymological dictionary than I do in, at Webster, because if you can go back to the root of the word, you can understand how it wove itself into a lie.
Mm-hmm. And, that's the great part about these 30 principles is I want to almost say we're relearning the actual meaning of these words and what they are. And we start to look at it from a new lens of perspective,
Mhm.
with some of these principles, you know, creation and movement, they give different aspects that maybe you weren't really attuned to, speaking of frequency. And now you're tuning into the truth of that frequency, and it presents another perspective of it.
Right, right. Yeah. One of my favorite quotations is from a comedian that my husband worked with before, George Carlin. He's no
Mm.
longer. One of my favorite George Carlin quotations is language is by and large designed to cover up the truth. Yeah, when you think about it.
And what a great comedian George Carlin was. He spoke the truth
Yeah.
and made it funny,
Mhm.
because we know it's all a bunch of lies that we live.
Yeah,
And we don't want to admit that sometimes, right?
yeah,
That can be very painful. But that shows us the inner work that we need to be more aware of, that we might need to do. And, embodying this body of work really kind of exposes us a little bit and gives us something to look at and to say, oh, so that's what it really means. And that's what's really part of me. Yet I'm not necessarily living this authentic part of who I really am. And now
Right.
with the new meaning, I can embody that. So it's
Right.
a great piece of work.
Yeah, I'll give you an example or two if we have a little more time.
Sure.
One of them is that there are two principles in this system of 30 that sound opposite from each other. Placement and movement.
Mm.
They sound like they're opposites. But when you take them back, as I said, to their point of origin, let's say at the Big Bang, placement is in alignment with that very real thing, that very real truth of physics, that no two quanta can occupy the same place at the same time. So there, right? I'm here, so you got to be there because you can't be here because that's an agreement in the very foundational blocks of the entire universe. No two objects can occupy the same place at the same time. So placement. But meanwhile, movement is about the fact that those quanta are always vibrating, right? So there's no such thing as still. Everything is always vibrating,
Right.
but in proximity to each other, right? And in agreement with each other. So placement and movement, which sound like opposites, are actually the same thing, spoken differently or seen through different lenses.
Mm.
There's another one, the principle of generosity. Like I don't have right on the top of my head the etymological meanings of the four syllables, but there are meanings of each of the four syllables. And so what it comes out to, what it comes back to is giving and receiving have to be in balance for generosity to occur. So I can only give to the extent that I receive, and I can only receive to the extent that I give, to the extent that I make room for the receipt, right? And so a lot of times in our cultures, we say, well, I'm not going to give because I don't want to pay for somebody else's kid to go to school. I don't want to be taxed for somebody else's kid to go to school. I want to be, I want it to be all about my kid without realizing that in educating all of our children, we are all in receipt of a stronger community, of a stronger nation, of a stronger government. So that misunderstanding of generosity being all about giving is, it's another thing, another new definition that we come to when we go to the etymological, source.
Mm.
So anyway, each one of these words, each one of these 30 principles has root words and root tones that change their definition.
Mm.
Another one is resistance.
Ooh.
Resistance is a principle that is, psychology has appropriated the word resistance to mean you're not doing what I want you to do, and so what's wrong with you, right? But as a spiritual principle, resistance is the ability to take in information and give it just enough friction to become useful in form. It's sort of like when the water flows over the Hoover Dam. It has to go through a series of resistors before it can become the kind of electricity or energy that we can use in our households. But as a personality, if resistance is one of the principles, and often when somebody says, when I say to somebody, oh, your primary principle is resistance, they're like, no, it's not. I'm not resistant. But it's like we call it gentle friction.
Yes.
If you are a resistor, you're able to take in information and give it the energy that it needs to be expressed in form. So, right, I could go on and on, but all of these words have slightly different definitions based on their etymological sourcing than we use in common vernacular.
And that's just so amazing. the body of work, these 30 principles have so much depth to them. So thank you for bringing it into the world, and also thank you for bringing it into this new project of insanity, because we all need to have those check marks so we can better understand who we are and how to really live authentically from our very best and highest self. And the more work that we do for ourselves, the more work we invest into our collective, because we become better. And
Yeah.
love to say, it's the drop of the stone into the water, that ripple effect. We never see the end.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
just a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Connie, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today, or to tell us where we can find this insanity work that we're going to be doing for 2025?
I do want to say something.
Sure.
Uh, One of my students who lives in Peru, who is an influencer in the Spanish world, suggested to me, I want to do your Instagram. I want to be your Instagram master, right? Or something. So I do have an Instagram thing that's really fun because she does some fun editing with it. And it's called Connie Kaplan Community on Instagram. So that's a good place to get like little tips about what all these 30 spiritual principles are. If anybody who's listening to this is interested in the sanity class, just email me. We did a sample class. I did a sample class last week and I recorded it. So I'll send you the link to the sanity class, and you can listen to it. And if it sounds interesting to you, you can sign up for it. But it starts in January, so it's kind of like emergent right now.
Awesome. A great way to jump into the new year, to be sane, because it's going to be a heck of a ride for 2025.
So together, let's do the world in sanity.
That's it. Insanity. I'd like to thank our listeners again for joining us on another episode of the Ascension Stargate podcast series. Thank you, Connie, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.